नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते
भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पश्चात्देशतारिणे।
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष
शून्यवादी
पश्चात्यादेश
पश्चात्देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरा भक्तवृंदा।
everybody Jaya Shri Krishna
चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री
श्री अद्वैता गदाधर
श्रीवास आदि गौरा
भक्तवृंदा।
Hare Krishna. That's it. Go on.
हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण हरे हरे
राम हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
Hare Krishna,
कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
Haribol. Thank you, Rasini Mataji. Thank you, Yi Mataji, and everybody.
Yay!
Jai. Thank you, Mataji. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanasalakaya Chaksurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivikna Vinasha Narsimha Iti Namine. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांता स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधरा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे. Everybody, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Rama Rama
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Hare.
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so as you have noticed, I did not assign any slokas today. So I'm just gonna, because I was not sure who's coming, who's not coming. So I'm gonna go on my name list here. Okay, Yi Mataji, can I request you to read this slide?
Yeah. Understanding of Gita. The subject of the Bhagavad Gita entails the comprehensions of the five basic truths. First of all, the science of God is explained, and then the constitution position of the living entities, jivas. There is Iswara, whose mean the controller, and there are the jivas, the living entities, which are controlled. If a living entity says that he is not controlled, but that he is free, then he is insane. The living beings is controlled in every respect, at least in his conditioned life. So in the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matter deal with the Iswara, the supreme controller, and the jivas, the control living entities. Prakti means material nature, and time, the duration of existence for the whole universe or the manifestation of material nature. And karma is activity, are also discussed. The cosmic manifestation is full of different activities. All living entities are engaged in different activities. From Bhagavad Gita, we must learn what God is and what the living entities are, what Prakti is, what the cosmic manifestation is, how it is controlled by time, and what the activity of the living entities are.
Right, thank you, Mataji. So question for everybody. What if somebody asks you, what is the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita? How do you answer in one sentence? How do you answer?
The five basic truths
Okay, what are those, Mataji?
is the Iswara, the controller, the jivas, the living entity, then the time, duration, time, then the karma, action, four here. First is the Iswara, the controller, the jivas.
Okay,
Then
first
the
is God,
nature,
second is
practice.
Jiva.
The practice, the material nature, the
Prakriti.
time, and the karma. Five basic truths.
Yeah, these are the five main topics of Bhagavad Gita. So wherever you go, you can always categorize it largely under these five topics. So these are five subject matters discussed in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so we need to understand this. We have to strongly understand this one. What is Bhagavad Gita about? So in Bhagavad Gita, we learn about who is God, who is the Jiva, what is the material nature, what is time, and what is karma. So among these five, karma is temporary, but because it can be changed, the rest cannot be changed. Okay, so please remember this. Okay, so we move on. Okay, in Gita Mahatmya is a portion from Padma Purana. Padma Purana is a conversation between Lord Shiva and Mother Parvati. Okay, so in short, Lord Shiva has glorified Bhagavad Gita in 7 verses. Okay, this one we covered the first 7 days of our 18 days level 1. So first day verse 1, second day verse 2, remember? And then in detail, Lord Shiva also glorified each of the Bhagavad Gita chapters to Mother Parvati, and this had appeared in Uttarakanda. Okay, can somebody read this for us, please?
I will go on that.
Okay.
Okay, so Sri Shiva said, "My dear Parvati, now I will tell you the glories of the 7th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, hearing which one feels his ears have been filled with divine nectar." Krishna.
Okay, hold on, yeah. Just give me a moment. Mm. Okay, I don't know why. Just give me a moment, yeah. Right. Okay, so basically Lord Shiva is the opening and by saying that he's going to glorify the 7th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so this is the story about somebody. The location is in Pataliputra. Pataliputra is this was like a 413 BCE, is related to that era. Okay, and then there are some histories on that which we will not go into. This place is in India. Okay, so the picture is here. This is a Mahavir Mandir. There's a famous Hanuman temple here in Pataliputra. Okay, I think this is one of the ISKCON temples there because they have Jagannath. So this story is about a person. Actually, this is just for illustration purposes. So there was a person who, by the name of Shankukarna. Shankukarna. Okay, so in that town of Pataliputra, there lived a Brahmana. Okay, his name is Shankukarna. But this Brahmana, he had very nice spiritual upbringing, but later on he became a very successful businessman, very rich. He had very large amount of wealth. Okay, he is so rich that even kings will come to his house to eat, to dine. So he's that rich that he can host kings. Okay, however, later on when he got busy with his business affairs, he had no time to perform devotional services. Okay, and he never, point to note is that he did not do any ritualistic process or ritualist rites for his forefathers, for his ancestors. So he has forgotten that duty. He was not doing that. Okay, and that's number two. He's very rich and he did not perform any devotional services and he did not perform any rites for his ancestors or forefathers. And the next is he's very miserly. Miserly means he has a lot of wealth, but he doesn't use it. He hides it under the ground. He buried it under the ground. Okay, so yeah, this is the wealth. All right, and then they were going for a wedding. Whose wedding? Shankukarna is going to get married for the 4th time. So everybody were going. He was going with his wives and children and other relatives. Okay, for his 4th marriage. And then those days they travel on the road. They take very like few days. So one day they wanted to rest. So they pulled over and they wanted to take a rest for the night. So while he was sleeping, unfortunately, a snake came and bite him. Okay. So what happens is that they tried, the relatives all tried to call doctors and the mantra chanters, those days they have all this, but too late, he cannot be saved. So he died. Okay, he was bitten by a snake. Okay, so can you imagine his mental state when he was dying? What do you think must have been on his mind? If you can see the sloka given there, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, oh son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. This is in chapter 8. Chapter 8 is attaining the supreme. So this is where Krishna explains about whatever you are having on your mind at the time of the death, that you will get in your next birth. So, given his background, Shankukarna's background, what do you think must have been on his mind?
Money.
Money. Yeah, what will happen to his money? What else?
Fear that he's going to die.
Yeah, definitely fear for death, yes. But what is he worried about at the time of the death? What could have been his worry?
Worried
Who's
about
gonna inherit? Sorry.
and his wife,
Yeah,
his family.
actually his worry is about the money.
Yeah.
He's worried about the money. Okay, his wealth. Okay, so this money, right? He actually buried near his house. Okay, where he had lived, and the best part, he never tell anybody where is the money that he has got this much of wealth buried under the. He did not tell anybody, and he was worried about it. Okay, so in the past we had in the past the sastras have mentioned that when you are worried, when you are dying, when you're worried about the house that you have built, about your family when you are dying, right? So these kind of people, they actually be born as tree outside the house, outside the family house. So this has happened previously. But for Shankukarna, he took a form of a snake. Okay, you can see here, because he was bitten by a snake, and then he was thinking about the wealth that he's buried next to his house, which nobody knows. So he wanted to protect that. He took he gotten the form of snake. It is called Preta Sarp. Sarpa means snake. So Preta, the body of a snake. And he resided at the place where his wealth was buried. So he was protecting it so that nobody will come and take it. Okay, in the first place, nobody knows, but he's just protecting the wealth. Okay, and then after some time, he felt tired of being trapped in this body of snake, and he wants to break free, he wants to break free and, continue his journey. So what happened is, he had many sons. So one of the sons' dream, he appeared and told this son to help him. Okay, he just said, help me, something like that. And then the next morning when the son got up, he shared this dream to his brothers, to the other sons, that he had this dream. Okay, so in this dream, I think he would have shared, there's a detail of this wealth buried under the ground. So what happened the next day, they all went looking for the wealth buried under the ground. Okay, so what they saw, actually a small hole there. So that is actually a hole of a snake there. Okay, so one of the son took a large digging instrument and started digging. Okay, the father had apparently indicated in his dream the wealth is buried there. Okay, but as he went there, he couldn't exactly point where the exact burial for that, the exact spot the wealth was buried. So he was searching the whole place for a long time. So finally only he came to this snake hole, because initially he was not sure where exactly the spot is. And then he started digging out that spot. Okay, then suddenly a snake appeared. Okay, the snake appeared. It was very large and fearful. He was so angry. Who are you? Why are you here? What are you doing? Who has sent you? Why are you digging this place? So please answer me now. He was demanding like that. Then the son replied, then he knows instantly that's his father, because he had the dream. And he said, I'm your son. My name is Shiva. And you came in my dream last night. You were saying there's a hidden treasure in this place. I came to take it. All right. And then the father, in the form of the snake, started laughing. If you are my son, and if you want to help me, why aren't you doing any ritualistic ceremony, the necessary ceremony for me to break free from this hellish situation? Why you let me trap in this snake? Shouldn't you be doing that first? All right. Previously in my life, I spent so much of time acquiring this wealth and burying it, and I've been thinking about it until my last moment. And this is what happened to me. Aren't you like taking lessons from my life? Are you also going to be like this? I can see that you also heading the same way, the same path. Okay, so it was so there was a conversation. And then the son back to his senses, and he said, okay, dear father, so please tell me, how can you be freed from this hellish situation? Okay, so the son was asking, should I do some tapasya? Should I do some charity in your name? Should I do some yagya in your name, so you can be freed from this body of the snake? So what should I do? Tell me, what should I do? Then the father said, not by any kind of charity, tapasya or yagya, But only by reciting the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita will I be able to become free from the wheel of birth and death. I don't want to take birth again in this animal form or human form. I don't want, because as I told you in the beginning of his life, he would have acquired some spiritual education. So leveraging on that, he is suggesting to the son, I don't want any of these ritualistic ceremonies, but please recite this chapter 7 for the benefit of my soul. Okay. All right, my dear son, kindly perform the Shraddha ceremony and on that day. Shraddha ceremony is the obituary, is it? Right? On that day, invite a Brahmana who is in the habit of chanting the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita and feed him very sumptuously. So he's saying you have this event, Shraddha ceremony, oblation, ceremony where you offer oblations. All right, and then you invite a Brahmana who is expert in reciting this 7th chapter and you feed him. So in this way, I will be freed from this body, okay, free from birth and death. So that's how the story ended, and that is the glory of the chapter 7, where when you recite this for the benefit of the our ancestors, forefathers who have passed on, so it will really beneficial for them. So this is the glory of chapter 7. Okay. So what happens after that? Following the father's instruction, the son and along with the other sons also performed the Shraddha ceremony, followed the instruction, invited the Brahmana. So along with that, they also daily recited the chapter 7 for the benefit of the father. So finally, Shankukarna gave up that body of the Preta Sarp, okay, the body of the snake, and he attained it is mentioned that he has attained a divine 4-armed body. So in Vaikuntha, it is said that everybody has same body like Lord Vishnu, except that the Lord Narayan will have 3 butts of mark on his chest. The rest of them don't have, but the rest of them will have that same color, same 4-handed form. Okay, this is called liberation in, this is called Swarupya Mokshas. So there are 5 types of liberation. So if there is another chance for me to elaborate on that, I will elaborate. So one of it is attaining the same form as the Lord, not becoming same as the Lord, attaining the same form of the Lord, 4-handed form, 4-armed form. So the lesson that we can get from here is that we need to be pure to chant we need to find a pure Brahmana to chant the chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita. But if we can do, also is very good for our own ancestors. Okay, and generally we need to be very careful when we appoint a priest or Brahmana for our events, because their purity will result in the effectiveness of the outcome and the recipient, how much the recipient is receiving from them. Okay, but with the association of Vaishnavas in the assistance of the Maha Mantra chanting and this recitation, it will all give a very good benefit. It will quickly lead to purification. Okay. Oh yeah, and then what happened is that the sons, instead, because they have the realization and the knowledge already, so instead of taking the whole wealth and enjoying themselves, they actually they did charity. They did charity. They donated and everything. So they actually give back to people. Okay. Yeah. Yes, that's about it. Oh yes, they have given the wealth to build temples, digging wells. So those days, well is very important. So they spend the money to build temple, digging wells, and they distribute prasadam. So they have engaged this kind of activities, and then they had a daily recitation of the chapter 7, and they quickly attained the lotus feet of Vishnu, Krishna. Okay. My dear Parvati, I have told you the wonderful glories of the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Anyone who hears this description will be freed from all sinful reactions. Okay. Okay. So how many sections are there in Bhagavad Gita? How many chapters are there?
18 chapters.
18 chapters. How can we sectionize it?
Don't know.
Don't know. Okay. Do you see how many parts are there in a sandwich?
3.
3. Okay, very good. So 3. First is the bread. Second is the inti here. And then the third is another layer of bread here. So in the first 6 chapters, we have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We are entering 7 today. So the first 6 chapters is touching on Karma Yoga and Dhyana Yoga. Okay, the second 6 chapters is talking about Bhakti Yoga. The third section is Jnana Yoga. Okay, so before we move on, this is the last verse that we did in chapter 6. After Krishna explains about Dhyana Yoga, the Yoga ladder, Astanga Yoga and everything, finally Krishna said, of all the yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. So at the end of chapter 6, Krishna says, who is the best yogi? The best yogi is the Bhakti yogi. So now this will bring us into chapter 7 because we want to understand further. Okay, this is how I break down the points. Great faith, abiding in me, thinking of me, renders service, and therefore he is the greatest of all yogis. Now, when we want to think of somebody, when we want to remember somebody, which when it applies in Krishna consciousness to Krishna, to think of Krishna, to remember Krishna, this is the essence of purification. So to remember somebody, to think of somebody, we need to have knowledge about this person. And this knowledge is provided in chapter 7. Okay. So chapter 7 to 12, it will be speaking mainly on Bhakti Yoga. Okay, and you might be wondering why in the middle of battlefield, why in the middle of the war, we need to learn about Bhakti Yoga. Why do we need this knowledge? So to this, we have to understand that this is not an ordinary war. This is Dharma Yudh. Yudh means war. Dharma means Vedic religion or religious principles. And this Yudh, this war, is fought according to religious principles, not like whimsically like now is happening, it's not. So everything they do, if you read the Mahabharata, everything has a code. All right, they might be fighting during the day, but at the night you will see the enemy, both sides, they are visiting each other, and they'll be like very normal, like friends. So that is the code. And then you cannot attack somebody from the back, or when somebody has surrendered, you cannot attack. So these are all this code which we are not following now in the modern age. So this is called Dharma Yudh. It's fought according to religious principles. So, however, Arjuna had doubts, right? If we see the chapter 1, chapter 2, all his reasons and symptoms and everything, right? It's because Arjuna had doubts. So Krishna is trying to remove these doubts. And to remove these doubts, the knowledge on Bhakti Yoga has to be given. He has to explain about Bhakti Yoga to remove the doubts. So it's very relevant. Okay, Jnana means knowledge, Vijnana means knowledge in practice. Okay, this is a Sanskrit title, Jnana Vijnana Yoga. Okay, so as a comparison, if you see level 1, we only did very few verses. In level 2, we have so many verses here, and we will run through it. I will just call out your name and you can just read the English translation, and I might not stay very long on revision verses. Okay, because I have added on verses from Bhagavatam and Ishopanishad and Brahma Samhita, so we need time to do that as well. So basically what you need to know, what we're going to cover in chapter 7 is that how important to know Krishna through hearing. All right, and then Krishna will explain about his material and spiritual energies. Okay, not very technical, we're just going to have a surface understanding on that. And these energies is very much relevant to the 3 modes of material nature. Anybody knows what are those 3 modes of material nature?
Goodness, passion, and ignorance.
Yes, very good. So after Krishna gives us the knowledge of these 3 modes of material nature, he will also give us a solution how to overcome this. Okay, and to overcome this, we need to have knowledge. To overcome these 3 modes of material nature, we need to surrender. And then when it goes into the topic of surrender, Krishna will say there are few kinds of people who will surrender, and there's this kind of people who don't surrender. So Krishna will explain who are these people. Those people who will surrender, those people who will not surrender. Because if you surrender only, you can overcome the modes. So we want to know, are we in the mode, are we in the surrendering kind of people, or we are not the surrendering kind of people. So you want to know that. And then by that, by getting this knowledge, we will overcome the modes. Okay, because finally, knowing Krishna will free us from bewilderment. Okay, this is a revision verse. Can somebody read? Kala Mataji? Sharmila Mataji?
Can I? Okay. Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Now hear, O son of Partha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt."
Okay. Thank you. Lata Mataji has connection problem. Lata Mataji, she can't get back. Okay, now. Okay, here clearly Krishna is saying, okay, in chapter 6, right, at the end, Krishna says the highest yoga is the Bhakti Yoga. And then finally Krishna is saying, to understand him, you need to hear. Okay, and hearing is the first step of Bhakti Yoga. If you remember the 9 types of devotion service, it starts with Sravanam. Sravanam means hearing. Okay, Krishna is telling Arjuna, you have to practice Bhakti Yoga. And when you practice Bhakti Yoga, because that is the topmost yogi, right? You have to practice with the consciousness of Lord Krishna. Okay, and if you want to practice Bhakti Yoga with the consciousness of Lord Krishna, then you have to hear about Lord Krishna. And what could be the better option of hearing than hearing from Krishna himself, right? The best person to hear from about Krishna is Krishna himself. The best way to know me is to ask about me to me, and I will explain myself to you. So like that. So many people can describe a lot of things about me, but to know me, you have to come to me and I will give the information. So like that, right? So no, everybody can write everything about celebrity on so many columns, but only when you read their autobiography, you will know, oh, this is the actual person. So like that, Krishna is giving the knowledge about him by himself, and it starts with Shravanam. Okay, so to quickly, make you all recall these 9 types of devotional service, who taught us? It's actually Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj is son of the demon king Hiranyakashipu. So this will appear in teachings of Prahlad Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7. Okay, in the 9 ways of devotional service given by Prahlad Maharaj, Sravanam is the first. Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dashyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. So of all this, the most powerful of the 9 processes of bhakti is the hearing and chanting of the Lord's holy name. Means a description of Krishna's activities, descriptions of Krishna's names. Okay, and this is where the whole yoga angas all culminate here in this. Okay. Okay, so now in 7.2, Krishna will say, I will declare you. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge. He's going to give us the full knowledge. He's not going to give part and partial. Okay, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, after you know this, nothing further shall remain for you to know. Like this is the end of knowledge. All right. If you are exposed to other scriptures from other faiths, you will see lines like, this is just a little, there is more to give you. Okay, if I can't recall which, like from is also in Bible, because my husband is ex-Christian, right? So he used to give this Bible classes previously, and he said there are lines like this. You are only ready to know this much. Okay, I cannot give you everything. So, but in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives everything. Okay, so this is a comparison that we can make. Okay, right? So 7.3. Guna Mataji, are you able to read? Okay, Mataji is still driving, I think. Rasini Mataji, you can go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth.
Yes, thank you, Mataji. So this is talking about how rare is a person who knows about Lord Krishna. Why are we here? Why the rest are not here? Why are we here? So we can understand that there are so many people, so many millions of people on the planet. Okay, but the truth is that not all of them are thinking of perfection. Let's talk about perfection first. Lord Krishna comes later. Let's talk about perfection means. Perfection means because we know we are not fully happy. There's always the cycle of birth and death taking place. So we want to perfect our life. So people will start, generally people will be busy thinking of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So all their activities and thinking is basically revolves around these four activities. All right, and these are the people who don't acquire about life. Who are they? They don't try to understand themselves or how to control the mind and senses. So they don't question all this. So out of these million people, a few thousands of people will come out and they will start questioning. They will start moving towards perfection. So like this, they will do some sadhanas. They will get some yogic power. Okay, and like this, they can be categorized in a more advanced position compared to the rest of them. Okay, they are more advanced. However, even though they have started their way to the path to the perfection, however, they have not known Krishna in truth. Maybe they have seen Krishna is just one of the gods, or all gods are same as Krishna. So they may have this kind of theory, belief and understanding. So the full perfection is when we fully understand about Krishna. So this one we will see later. Okay, so Krishna will start talking about this matter. He will talk about himself, his different energies. Okay, here Krishna is talking about his energies. Ye Mataji?
Yeah. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies.
Okay, so here Krishna starts describing, because earlier he said, nobody knows, not many knows me in truth. So he's giving us the truth now, one by one he's giving. So generally, Krishna is starting to explain there are 5 gross elements which you can see, you can see, you can touch. And these are earth, water, fire, air, ether. See, these are gross. And there are 3 subtle elements, which is mind, intelligence, and ego, false ego. So this is subtle. This one you cannot see. This one we will cover later when we enter the Jnana Yoga section, which we also already covered in level 1, if you remember. Okay. So this is just a quick sneak peek. So they are all together 8 elements together, okay, comprising Lord Krishna's material energies, all right? So just like how we have gross body that we can touch, we also have subtle body. And just like how we have gross body and we have subtle body, we also have spiritual body. So what is the spiritual body? Okay, the one we will see in the next verse. So basically the 7.4 is referring to the material energy that is separate from Krishna. Okay, we are also part of this. We are also part of this Prakriti. Krishna is talking about the material nature, right? Prakriti is material nature. So we are part of it. However, material nature is made of matter, and things are not matter. Matter means things, objects that are not living, right? Like this table, chair, laptops and everything. And we are also, the living thing is also part of the material nature. And because we have consciousness and the matter do not have consciousness, we are called superior. We are superior to that. Okay. All right. So let's move to 7.5. Charmila Mataji. Or anybody can just volunteer to read, yeah.
Besides this, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities for exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature.
Yes, thank you, Mataji. So like I said, they are objects, okay, this part of the material nature. And we are also part of material nature, but we are superior because we have consciousness, Okay, and we are trying to what to do the material nature? What are we doing to the material nature?
Destroying,
The
exploiting,
word that Krishna
overusing,
used,
exploiting, overusing.
exploiting, that we are trying to exploit the material nature. Why are we trying to exploit the material nature? Anybody? Let's think.
Because we are 5 elements also same to the material nature.
All right, but why are we exploiting? Exploiting means we are using the material nature. We are exploiting means we are using it for our benefit. So, yeah, why are we doing that to the material nature?
It's great by Krishna. We have to, because we have to live depending on this nature. If not, we also cannot live without nature.
Right, because the answer is because we are thinking the material nature is for my enjoyment. Therefore, it is all right for me to exploit the material nature. However, this is a disease. This is the problem. The problem is that we think that everything is for my pleasure. But we also must understand that we are also energy of the Lord. We are coming from the Lord. So it is not meant for us to exploit the material nature and enjoy it for ourselves. But when actually we are meant to be controlled by the Supreme Lord. We are trying to exploit the material nature. We are trying to control the material nature. We want to play the controller. We want to play God. Okay, so that is the problem. That will end up in a lot of other problems. Okay, then Krishna speaks about him further. So Krishna talks about this material nature, and then he talks about these living entities, and then he's going to talk about where all these are coming from. Anybody? Just English?
I read, Mataji.
Yeah.
All created beings have their source in these two natures, of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world. Know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution.
Right. So here in this chapter, Krishna is talking about different knowledge about him. He's talking about the 5 gross elements, and then he went into subtle element, which we did not go deeper inside. And then he talks about the material nature, where we are part of it. However, we are superior because we have consciousness and we are exploiting the material nature. Okay, and then Krishna also says, so there are 2 types of natures, that is spiritual and material world. Then Krishna say, I am both the origin and I am both the cause of dissolution of this. Both also created by me, both also dissolved by me. He says like that. He says that everything comes from Lord Krishna, and then eventually everything will go back to Lord Krishna. So like that, we are also coming from Lord Krishna. At the end, we are going back to Lord Krishna. Okay, he is the origin of both spiritual and material energies. I am both the origin and the dissolution. Okay, he will explain further. Okay, we just wait. Next, anybody?
I'll go, Mataji. Okay. O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Okay, yes, thank you, Mataji. So this is a revision verse. So if you all remember how, you can imagine the pearls strung on a thread. You can actually see the pearls, but you don't know what's actually holding them. Right, this is a very powerful verse on Lord Krishna's position. He's establishing his position. Very important. So you can see in the image, there's a string of pearls. We don't see the thread. But there must be a thread to hold the pearls together. If not, it doesn't magically just stand like that, right? So this is a very nice example. The pearls are there on the thread, but we don't see the thread. All right. So similarly, we can see this entire material creation or universes. These are perfectly controlled by Lord Krishna and his energies, but we do not see Lord Krishna with our eyes. We don't see that, just like we don't see the thread. All right. But sometimes you can see the thread in the pearls, among the pearls, underneath the pearls on the necklace. Then people can ask, if Lord Krishna is holding it, why we can't see? Because sometimes we can see the thread in the the necklace, right? Okay.
And but Krishna is already declaring here, there is no truth higher than me. Okay, there is no truth superior to me. And he already declares, he establishes his position that he is the highest. So there are so many kind of followers. They say that the one that I am following is the highest truth. We have that, right? But have we seen the personality that they are worshipping declared something like that in the scriptures? So far we have done the sastra that we are following. The sages have come to a conclusion that only Krishna has actually declared that he is in this position to say so. He is saying it, that I am the ultimate superior and ultimate truth, and there is no truth higher than me. Okay, there's no truth superior to me. He boldly declares. So this is how Krishna is, very direct and heavy and strong in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, and there's nowhere else that you can find somebody else saying that I am the superior, I'm the most superior. You don't find that. So in this verse, this is very important. This pearl example, you try to remember. Krishna is establishing himself that he is the superior and he's above all the 33 million devas and all that. He's not a deva. Okay, he is the highest truth. That's why he is called Deva, the Lord of the Devas. Okay, so it's not only in Bhagavad Gita. I'm giving you all some extra points from other scriptures like Brahma Samhita. What is this Brahma Samhita? Anybody knows? What is this Brahma Samhita? Who speaks this scripture? Who is speaking this?
Lord Brahma.
Brahma. Lord
Yes, Brahma. Lord Brahma is glorifying Krishna. And he is saying here, he has no other origin. And he is the prime cause of all causes. So remember when Krishna say, I am both the origin of the spiritual material world. So he is not only saying it, Lord Brahma is also saying it. So if you remember, there are 6 opulences of Krishna. Who can tell me that? 6 opulences.
Strength, fame, wealth,
strength,
beauty,
sorry.
Beauty, knowledge, and renunciation.
Okay. Strength. What was the second one you said?
Strength, wealth, strength, wealth, beauty.
Anybody else can help?
Knowledge,
yes.
And just now I said, forgot.
Yeah, you said that. I just wanted to ask you again.
Forgot already.
Ada lagi satu.
Wealth, beauty, strength.
Even Sharmila Mataji, you got 5. One
fame.
more.
F-A-M-E, fame.
Yes, fame. Now, why do we say Krishna is famous? Are we talking about the people on the earth? Wherever you go in the nook and corner, you ask them, do you know Krishna? Oh, if you know Krishna, then Krishna is considered famous. No, Krishna doesn't need validation from us to show that he is famous. His fame is validated or acknowledged or is accepted by the greater personalities in this entire creation. It's not us. Okay, it's not us, because even Michael Jackson is famous in so many villages. So we are not validating based on that, and we are validating based on this is established based on the acceptance of great personalities like Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is the greatest being in this material world. He creates, he is the secondary creator, and he is declaring here that Krishna is the prime cause of all causes. So this is how we establish or substantiate that one of the opulence of Krishna, the fame. How it is substantiated? Because the acceptance of the great personalities like Lord Brahma. Okay, and then there's another verse here, Brahma Samhita also. Here Lord Brahma says, somebody please read.
I will read.
Okay.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, yielding all desire in a box filled with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purple trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis.
Yeah, so this is how Krishna is described, his opulence, and how Lord Brahma is describing Krishna, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor. So everything comes from Krishna. And remember in elsewhere, Krishna said, I am the seed giving father. So there are so many ways, so many sastras, so many places, instances. Krishna's position is established like this, that he is the cause for everything. Okay, Govindam Adi Purusham. This last line here, Adi Purusham is the primeval Lord, the first progenitor. Okay, these are all the Chintamani, Prakara, Satma. So these are all explaining this. This is one of the sloka we sing. Oh no, we don't sing this. There's another two, Venum Kwan Antam. That's different. But these are all very famous slokas from Brahma Samhita, establishing Krishna's position as the creator. Okay, not ending there. I'm also giving you all two verses from Sri Ishopanishad. Sri Ishopanishad, we have total 108. This is like an annex to every Vedas. Okay, every Vedas have the a concluding Upanishads. Upanishad means instructions. So one of it is Sri Ishopanishad. We do not have translation for all the Upanishad, like we have Kali Santarana Upanishad, Brihanaradiya Upanishad, Katha Upanishad. We have so many, but Prabhupada decided to translate only Sri Ishopanishad because it has a very condensed information about the Supreme. Okay, so here you can see how Krishna creates something from him, and yet he always remains the full. Just like how one big strong candle can light up so many thousands of candles and it still remains the same powerful, that one candle, and it doesn't diminish the power of that one candle, even though it lights up other candles. So like that, Krishna is being glorified here. Somebody please read.
Can I read, Mataji?
Oh yes, Prabhu, please.
Is it the English version or
yes, English, Prabhu.
The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete, and because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself, because he is the complete whole. Even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance.
Right, thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, so here Sri Upanishad, it's telling that no matter how many, he is complete, right? He's complete, and so he is producing so many complete units, and that complete unit is complete on its own. All right, and even though there's so many complete units coming out from him, he remains the complete balance. He remains complete. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. So it's very good. This is like a tongue twister. It's very nice verse. So it's very important to show that even though so many complete units coming out from Krishna, he remains the complete unit. Okay, complete balance. Okay, another verse from Ishopanishad that mentions how everything is coming from Krishna is this. Somebody read, please.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong.
Yes, very good, Mataji. So there are 2 points here. Like earlier, I said that the living entities, we are exploiting the material nature, and we are thinking all of it are for our enjoyment. So the Ishopanishad is telling there are certain things already allocated for you. Okay, so you just have to be happy with that and don't try to be greedy about other people's allocation. Okay, this is a very good value here that we can take from Ishopanishad. Okay, but the first point here is that everything animate or inanimate within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. We are not the controller. So here the Ishopanishad, the Vedas are establishing that the controller is only the Lord. And the Lord is meant to control the others. Remember in our introduction slide earlier, Ishvara is the controller. Jivas are those that are controlled by the Lord. Okay, so here until now I have taken you along where Krishna is establishing that he is the source of everything. Not only Lord Krishna is saying, the Vedas are saying, and Lord Brahma is also saying that. And then Krishna talk about the 5 gross elements. and then how we are part of the material nature, but we are different from this matter because we have consciousness and we have control of the material nature. But what we do, we exploit it. All right, but in Ishopanishad, we are seeing that we are supposed to take only what we need, all right, and not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. Okay, so cannot rampas all that. All right. Okay, so now Krishna is going to take us into a very interesting journey. He's going to talk about all the dominant qualities of various things, and he is saying that he is that. Okay, so this is actually summary of verses in chapter 7, verses 8 until 11. And then these are all the different qualities of different things, okay, are mentioned here. So for example here, Krishna says, I am the taste of water. Okay, so you know, we always say the water doesn't have taste. It doesn't have, it's odorless, it's tasteless, it's smellless, all that, right? But actually the water does have a taste, right? Yes or no? And that the taste you do not find in any other liquid. So when you drink the water, you need feel the taste of the water. Then Krishna says, I am that taste of the water. So every time we drink water every day. Okay, because remember, we want to remember Krishna. Ultimately we want to remember Krishna. And how we can remember Krishna if you don't have deities, if you don't do all the devotional activities. So the basic things we are doing is every day we drinking water. So when we drink water, we think of Krishna. Oh, this is the taste of water. One time there's one devotee went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I cannot give up wine. What should I do? Never mind, Krishna says the taste of water. So when you drink wine, you think this is the taste of Krishna. But of course, he is not encouraging the person to go on drinking wine. But eventually that thought will purify him and he will give up that, because wine is intoxicating, right? Okay, so like this. Oh, son of Kunti, I am the taste of water. And then Krishna says, I am the light of the sun and the moon. Okay, so every day we see sun and moon, right? When every time we see sun and moon, oh, this is so bright like Krishna. Oh, this moon is it's releasing very cooling rays. That is Krishna. So this is how we practice ourselves. We train ourselves to see things related to Krishna. Okay, Vedic mantras. I am the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. Okay, I am the sound in ether and ability in man. So ability, everybody has their own ability. So that ability, like if you recognize something, some very nice ability in somebody, that is Krishna. That ability is Krishna. Okay, so ether, the quality of ether is, there is no form, right? There is no form, there is no taste, there is no smell, there is no touch, but there is only sound. Ether means sound. So that is Krishna. He is saying that. Okay, the next is text 10. O son of Pritha, know that I am the original seed of all existence. The intelligence, sorry, I missed one. I am the original fragrance of the earth. I am the heat in fire. So basically, the earth has a very nice aroma, nice fragrance. So that fragrance is Krishna. Krishna is saying. Okay, I am the heat in fire. So fire means must have heat. So that heat is Krishna. Next, all that lives. I am the life of all that lives. He is the living force of all the living entities. And I am the penances of all ascetics. Ascetics means those are sages who perform lots of sadhanas and penances. So these are all Krishna saying this is him. Okay, next. Text 10. Next is text 10. O son of Pritha, know that I am the original seed of all existence. So in chapter 14, Krishna will say, it should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. He made all these creations possible, and he is the seed-giving father. The seed is coming from him. So this is why I brought in the chapter 14. Can you see? We can always, if you go by theme, right? If you go on thematic basis, you can actually take one topic and relate so many verses from different places. Okay, so like this, Krishna says he is the original seed of all existence, and he is the intelligence in the intelligent people. Okay, he is the prowess in the powerful man. He is the strength of the strong. And he is the sex life that is not contrary to religious principles. So that is something pure to create progeny. Okay, as long it is not against the dharma. Okay, I'm the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. Oh, Lord of the Bharatas. Okay. So we move on. So it's very nice. So please try to remember this. Wherever you see, you can think of Krishna. Is to train our mind to think of Krishna. 7.12, somebody please. We are entering the modes of material nature.
I'll read, Mataji.
Okay.
So, know that all states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am, in one sense, everything, but I'm independent. I'm not under the modes of material nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me.
All right, thank you. So, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And these are called three modes of material nature. Okay, so in material world, we, the conditioned souls, we are always controlled by these material nature. Sometimes we are forced to behave the way we do. Why? Because the modes of material nature are always working. Sometimes we are overcome by the mode of goodness. So we are always nice and calm and peace and everything. And then sometimes we are overcome by the mode of passion. We become very aggressive. We want to do this, do that. We get angry. These are all passion. And then sometimes we want to be so lazy, eat and sleep and hibernate. So these are all mode of ignorance. So these three modes, right? It doesn't stay on one mode all the time. It will keep changing. Sometimes the goodness will prevail over passion and ignorance. Sometimes the passion will prevail. Sometimes ignorance will prevail. So like that, the conditioned soul is always under the strings of this material, three modes of material nature, like you see in the picture. So there are three ladies there, right? And they are moving their string, and the puppets are also moving accordingly. So we are also like the puppets. We are also pulled, and all our limbs and mind and senses all pulled and controlled by the modes of material nature. So this is also Krishna's energy. Okay, all these energies are from Krishna. So, but Krishna is saying, these are my energies, but and then all the living entities are put under the influence of this material nature, but I do not come under the control of material nature. On the contrary, I control them. Okay, because these are my energy, I control them. So I do not come under their control. I do not come under the modes of material nature. Okay, and he says, I am independent. All right, let's move. So how to escape this? Are we going to like forever to be, controlled by the three modes like puppets? Are we going to forever going to be like that under the control? So how do you break free? Who's going to read?
I'll read, Mataji.
Okay.
This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it.
Yeah, so Krishna say, oh dear, yes, it's very difficult. Remember how Arjuna was asking, oh Krishna, this path is so troublesome. My mind is always turbulent. I think I can control the wind, but I cannot control my mind. It's very difficult for me. And then Krishna will try to comfort him. Yes, I know it's difficult, but with practice and detachment, you can do this. So yes, Krishna also understand, yes, it's very difficult to overcome. So the question is, how do we overcome this mode from material nature? Then Krishna admits, okay, yes, it's very difficult to overcome the material nature. The personification of this material nature is Mother Durga. Durga means great fort. Okay, if you translate that, it's a great fort. So a great fort is something that you cannot break free. So it's very difficult to come out. This is what Krishna is saying. It's very difficult to overcome. But he says, there is somebody who can overcome when you surrender to the master of the modes of material nature. Like if you are being chased by a dog, can we control the dog? Or you want to enter somebody's house and this dog is very, you're being intimidated by this dog, very threatened. So what do? You approach the master. Could you please control your dog? I want to, I want to walk. I want to enter the house. So the master will control the dog and then you can go. So this is how we should view it. So we want to surrender to the master. Don't surrender to these modes of material nature and do as it's dictated. So we didn't want to do that. So when we surrender to Lord Krishna, we can easily overcome it. So this is like a sea. You see, it's so turbulent. Remember that the sea that during the pralaya, at the end of time, the pralaya after the end of Kali Yuga, and everybody will get on the boat, right? And then there will be pralaya. The sea will be so much of, so strong, it's very turbulent, and the Lord comes as Matsya avatar in the beginning of Satya Yuga, because Satya Yuga is starting after Kali. Satya Yuga is starting, and they are the people on the boat, right? They for the next creation, okay, the next Manu will take them on the boat, and Matsya will come and control. So like that, Krishna will come and control. Krishna will help us to control that. Okay, we can overcome that. Okay. Yeah, so this example is actually showing that we can be a good swimmer in the pool. All right, we can be an expert, but when we go to the ocean, there's only so much we can go. So we will get exhausted and we have to wait for somebody to come and help. So this will be Krishna to come and help. So when he comes and help us, and that big ocean, the turbulent ocean will just look like a small puddle of water. Okay, it will look like that. So here there's a illustration where the Lord is coming on Garuda to save somebody who is drowning in the ocean. So this is actually the ocean of material miseries. So the Lord comes and saves us. Okay, so there's a story here. A bird, this bird, this bird actually made a nest at the shore, at the bank, at the shore of the ocean. So what happened is, when the waves of the ocean, splash on the beach, and then it takes away that there were eggs, it just laid eggs, so the eggs gone into the ocean. So it's called, then the parrot was a parrot or sparrow, yeah, sparrow was very angry at the ocean. Why did you eat my eggs? I'm going to drink you all up until I dry you up, then I can find my eggs. So like that, he was so angry, with determination. How ocean is so big, but the sparrow was so small. But the sparrow was so determined to drink up that ocean. Then he also started drinking. She will start drinking. Then the Lord Garuda saw, and they said, "What are you doing? Are you trying to dry up the ocean? Do you know that it's not possible?" "No, I don't care. I'm going to do it. I'm very determined," like that. So the Garuda will go to Lord Vishnu and narrate this story. There is this foolish sparrow. He's very angry with the ocean because the ocean took the eggs and hidden it. And then the ocean didn't want to give it, I don't know, for some reason. And then he's such a fool. He's trying to drink the ocean. Then the Lord say, "No, it's not fool. It shows that the bird has so much of determination and perseverance." All right, this is showing the spirit of patience. He is so patient. So actually, this is a lesson where the Lord is telling us that in the huge ocean of a sea of life, we need to this is a sea of ignorance. So we need to empty this sea of ignorance, not at one go. We have to do it drop by drop, slowly, drop by drop. So there's always tests and obstacles and problems, but the seeker with sincerity, he must, with perseverance, he has to carry on his endeavor. Okay, the sea is very vast. Okay, if you want to empty this sea of ignorance, you have to do it slowly. You have to empty it and fill it with knowledge. You have to empty it, we have to fill it with knowledge, and this only can be done drop by drop. So the Lord said, I'm actually very pleased with this bird. He's very determined. Okay, I will command the sea to return the eggs to this bird. So like that, the Lord commands the ocean to return the eggs to the bird. So this is the analogy. This is how we should take up the path of knowledge, drop by drop, little by little. But we always need the perseverance, the patience. Okay, so in Nectar of Instruction, Rupa Goswami given these three: Utsaha, Nischaya, Dhairya. patience, enthusiasm, and determination. We have to have these three. Okay. So maybe I can elaborate on that. What is this, each and everything? Okay, another time. Okay. So Krishna says that to overcome the mode of material nature, one needs to surrender to me. Okay. So we're going to see what kind of people can surrender and what kind of people cannot surrender. Okay, this is a revision, so we will just run through that. Okay, can somebody read for us, please? Just the English. Who cannot surrender? You're going to see them.
Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake in the aesthetic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me.
Okay, these are all the people who cannot surrender. So foolish means people who are like work hard like a donkey. Okay, the donkey doesn't realize that the grass is everywhere, but what he thinks is, oh, if I work hard, only the master will give me grass, so I need to work hard. And how the donkey is made to work hard, they'll tie the carrot in front and then ask him to walk with a huge load behind his back, right? So this is how, when people day and night, they spend their life working, and they do not have time for to acquire knowledge for self-realization or spiritual knowledge. So these are considered as grossly foolish, and they will not find time to surrender to the Lord. Okay, they always try to think. They only think how to fill their belly, how to acquire wealth, how to enjoy the life. This is what they think. They don't think what's going to happen to them after they die. Where are they going to go next? They don't think about it. So this is called foolishness. All right. Next is Naradama. This one is Mudha, right? This is grossly foolish is Mudha. Next is Naradama, who are lowest among mankind. These people, they actually born in materially well-to-do family, very educated family, good family, but they do not take interest in acquiring spiritual knowledge. Okay, so these are lowest, Naradama. Mayaya Partha Mayaya means those whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. So which means they try to take the knowledge from the scriptures, but they will try not to understand. I mean, they'll try to understand with their own mind and intelligence. So they're giving so much of room to speculate. Oh, this could be like this, this could be like that. Then they, misinterpret. So they have knowledge, but it's stolen by illusion. So because they don't want to take it as it is, they want to give their own interpretation. So this is called knowledge stolen by illusion. They have knowledge, but it's stolen by illusion. So they whimsically, they take in the information. Okay. And I'm not sure if I have gone very detailed. I'm sure I would have gone in detail in level 1, so you can rewatch the recording or something like that. So I'm just running through. The last one is atheist people. So atheist people, naturally, they defy God, right? I just read recently that these atheists, usually they will say, I don't believe in God because I have not seen God. Can you show me the evidence of seeing God? So apparently they are not very concerned about seeing God because they don't want God in their life, right? Even if you show them God, I don't think they will accept. Then they will say, oh, is God so cheap that he can appear to me? Just like, can you actually, if you want to see Prime Minister, can the Prime Minister come in front of you right away? Like that. So you have to have qualification. So this is a big topic on its own. So basically, these atheistic people, they are demonic because they defy God. Because later in Jnana Yoga section, there is divine qualities and demonic qualities, right? So there's nothing in between. Either you are divine or you are demonic. That's all. Okay, so these are the people, they do not surrender unto me. They do not accept. Okay, and these are the people who will surrender. So basically, we can identify these as impious people, and then these are pious people. Can somebody read, please?
Can I read, Mataji?
Yes.
Okay. O best among the Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me. The distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute.
Okay. Finish, Prabhu. Knowledge of Absolute. Okay. All right. So you can see here, there are stories here. So number 1 shows the distress, number 2 the desire of wealth, number 3 the inquisitive, number 4 is the searching for knowledge of absolute. So this also I went very detailed already. So basically why this is Gajendra, the king of elephant. He was being attacked by crocodile and he was in distress. In distress he called the Lord and the Lord came. So he surrendered in distress. This is Dhruva Maharaj, okay, because he was like he's upset that the father is only is loving the other son, the other prince, and he is neglected, and he got so angry. I also want a kingdom on my own. I want a great kingdom. So he will go to the forest, he will try meditate. For 6 months he meditated and Lord Vishnu appeared to him. So he surrendered to the Lord because he wanted wealth. Number 3 is, these are the sages of the Naimisharanya. This will be in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So after Krishna departed to the left to the spiritual world, they will all gather together. Oh no, now Lord Krishna has gone back to his spiritual world. So now where all the religious principles will be, what will happen? So they'll have this kind of questions, you know, so they are inquisitive. So basically these kind of people, they will ask questions like, who is God? What is God? This is called theology. Okay, they might not exactly looking for God, but they want to know something about it. So that's it. All right, they only want knowledge, but not necessarily want to surrender. Okay, they have questions. Okay, and the first one is generally is a very common reason for everybody to surrender. Whenever we have problem, we surrender to the Lord and we pray. You know, it's very normal. But these are all considered as pious. Okay, and then finally, this is the Sanat Kumaras. So they actually, they know about Krishna and they want to know more about Krishna. This is searching for knowledge of the absolute. Okay, so this for all are good. All are good. Okay, can somebody read this? Krishna is saying all are good, but who is the best? Okay, somebody.
Okay, I'll go, Mataji. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and the most perfect goal.
Very nice. Thank you, Mataji. So Krishna says here, all are pious. They are all good. They all can surrender. But among them, this is the word that Krishna used, magnanimous. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous, but he who is situated in knowledge, the last one is the best. Okay, later this video, right, I will share with you in the group. Okay, and he is, because he will be with the knowledge, he will be engaging in my transcendental service, and that way he can achieve me. Okay, so all the 4 types of devotees who come to the Lord are magnanimous, all are pious. They are all Mahatmas because they have, whatever reason it is, they have come to the Lord, they have surrendered. Okay, their surrender will kick off their spiritual path. All right, but one who engaged in his Krishna's transcendental service is sure to attain me and the highest and the most perfect goal. Okay, so this is the yoga. This is the best of the people. This is the yoga ladder. Okay, so we have covered the Astanga Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Astanga Yoga in the first 6 chapters. Okay, so just you can use this as a recap. So Karma Yoga means a person who is not too much attached to the fruit. Okay, he will be working, but he will be spending the results of his activities or salary or whatsoever for charity, donation, but they do not know much more than that. They don't know about that. Okay, he knows that it's working, but I don't want to be so attached to my results, so I do some charity. So that is Karma Yoga. So as he goes on doing this, with this because of the pious credits that he gets, he will be bestowed with some knowledge. So that knowledge, he will have the knowledge that he has is better than a person who has under Karma Yoga. So later he will be more renounced from these material things. Okay, he will then slowly he will get the knowledge of the spirit soul and super soul, right? Remember, there's a difference between soul and the matter. in chapter 2. So that is Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga is a subset of Jnana Yoga, where you learn about matter and spirit. Oh, okay, I'm the soul. I'm not the body perishes, but the soul doesn't. So these are all comes under Jnana Yoga. He gets that knowledge. So with that knowledge that he gets under this Jnana Yoga, he will advance further to Astanga Yoga, and he will start meditating. Why? Because he already knows we have spirit soul and we have super soul also in us. So the Astanga Yoga people, they will try to reflect inner and inward, and will meditate on the super soul. So this will be under Dhyana Yoga, which we covered last week. Okay, so they will know, okay, there are two souls, that is spirit soul, and the spirit soul is meant to serve the supreme soul, who is the master. And when he advances in such knowledge, he will come to Bhakti Yoga. When he comes to Bhakti Yoga, then he will realize, oh, the easiest process to achieve the Lord is through Bhakti Yoga, and the easiest process is by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, doing devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, and so on, the 9 devotional services. Okay, so this is how the yoga ladder works. So yoga means process of linking oneself with the Supreme. Okay, so this is like a quick recap in between. Now, when the jnanis will attain perfection, as you go on acquiring knowledge, and then what happens after you surrender? So what happens to them? Somebody please read.
Okay. After many births and deaths, he who is actually is knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes, and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. This is also a very important verse. Okay, earlier, what was the important verse I spoke about? The pearl. Okay, that is important. And then some verses from the Ishopanishad, the Om Purnam, that is also important. What else? The modes of material nature, where Krishna says that I am not under their influence. Okay, because they are my energy. So, and this is important. This is a revision sloka, but we want to stress the importance. It is said that we all know that we take many births and death, all right, and in the process we will acquire knowledge. So that's why when we know that the life is like a yoga ladder, you need to advance, don't try to go down, all right. Okay, so as you elevate yourself further, you acquire more knowledge, and it should result in surrendering to the Lord. Okay, and what is the surrender about? The surrender is knowing that Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Sarvam is all, everything. When we know the Supreme Lord is everything, and you surrender in that mode, not because you're distressed, not because you want wealth, not because you have some questions. So when we have the full knowledge, we surrender to the Lord, because knowing that He is the cause of everything, and that soul is very rare. That great soul, Sa Mahatma, that great soul, Sudurlabha, very rare. So remember the first few sloka, the out of many millions, thousands will endeavor for perfection. Out of them, hardly one knows me in truth. Yeah, that's because of this. We can endeavor, we can ask a lot of questions, but what are we going to do with that knowledge? So ultimately, the success, the effectiveness of the knowledge is to surrender to the Lord. Okay, we just don't want to be just like the inquisitive. What is God? Who is God? Where is He? Oh, okay, I found the answers already. All right, I'm done. So it should not end there. Okay, it should end in surrender. Okay, so such a great soul is very rare. This is the purpose of knowledge. People with knowledge are the best type, that Krishna said earlier, right? So what is the purpose of the knowledge? The purpose of the knowledge is to surrender to Krishna. And we do it after many, many births and death. And if you do that, then Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. Okay, that is the goal of knowledge. The goal of knowledge is surrender to Krishna. Okay, so if you remember these slokas in chapter 6, who remembers? Who can summarize for me? What is this about? A person who fails after he performs Dhyana Yoga. Who can summarize for me?
The unsuccess yoga, yogis, they were reborn. They were they will go to only heavenly planet. Then they will come down. They didn't go to Vaikunta, only heavenly planet. We will come down by rain. And then they will go to a rich family. They were born in a rich family or Brahmana's family. Correct, Gena?
Okay. Yes, you are there, Mataji. So there are two types of people. One who fails after a short term of practice, and one who fails after long term of practice. After one who fails after a short term of practice, they are reborn in a family of rich aristocracy, rich people, wealthy people, educated people. Okay, but not necessarily spiritual. But those who have practiced for a long time and then they fail, they will be reborn into a transcendentalist family. Okay, remember the video that I sent to you? One child was singing Damodarastakam, the mother was singing the first few words and then it finishes the last word. Yeah, so these are the souls that are born into transcendentalist family. With that, because of the impressions from the previous lives of his pious activities, he will continue his path. He will continue given the facilities. That's why Krishna let some people born in family with this kind of facility, so it will be easy for them because they have probably would have struggled in the past lives. So Krishna makes it easy for them. All right. 7.23. Somebody please. So I read. Okay, Rasini Mataji, go ahead.
Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. So here Krishna is describing the worship of demigod. Okay, so we have to understand that not everybody want to worship Lord Krishna. Okay, some people they want to worship other gods, and some think that all gods are the same. Okay, so we have this kind of understandings, various understandings. So Bhagavad Gita gives a point here. Krishna is describing here that people with small intelligence worship demigod. Because why? Because if you remember this verse, A Brahma Bhuvana Loka, all living entities up to the highest planet in the material world. What is the highest planet in the material world? Anybody?
Brahma Loka, Satya Loka.
Yes, Brahma Loka or Satya Loka. He is the highest living being, like I mentioned earlier, because he glorified when we covered the Brahma Samhita. Up to his planet, all right, birth and death take place. Okay, there might not be old age and disease, but birth and death takes place. You can be there when you are, to appear in as Brahma. Brahma is a position, yeah, just like Indra also is a position, like a prime minister. Anybody can become that. And to become Lord Brahma, you have to you have to be fully virtuous for 100 lives, not a single negative character. So if you could do that for 100 lives, then you will be given the position of Lord Brahma. And like that, to be Lord Indra also you have certain criteria. So if you do that, any living being, they can be Lord Brahma, but they will not be just an ordinary living being. They will be very special living being. Okay, because they are not ordinary because of the lives that they have done. I mean, the activity they have done. For example, the person who's going to become Lord Brahma has to be virtuous for 100 lives, 100 human lives. You can't be virtuous in animal life, right? So can you imagine what kind of impeccable life that you should have? All right. However, Krishna says, up to Brahma's, up to that such great person's loka, birth and death take place. So what happens during the pralaya? Everything will undergo dissolution. All will enter back Mahavishnu. So when everything enter back Mahavishnu, what will happen to the boons and the gifts and the prayers answered by the devas? Everything will go back. Everything, there's an end. So that is why Krishna says their fruits are limited and temporary. So it's not temporary between like 1 year to you. We're not talking about that kind of time span. We are talking about that huge time span. That, remember in our introduction slide, time is when the creation start and end. That is the time. So from the beginning of the time, end of the time, when everything goes into dissolution into Mahavishnu, then everything ends together with the Deva and together with the boons that they have given. So that is why Krishna is saying here, it is not wise to worship demigod to ask material things. Okay, so we need to give respect. We have to give respects. Okay, this is the sloka. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Okay? And then this expands why Krishna says the fruit is temporary and limited. Can somebody read for us, please? The blue one, both the English translation.
I'll read, Mataji.
Yeah.
O Lord, O Supreme, unintelligent persons who thirst for sense enjoyment and who worship various demigods fail to worship your Lordship, and instead they worship the insignificant demigods who are but small sparks of your glory. With the destruction of the entire universe, including the demigods, the benedictions received from the demigods also vanish, just like the nobility when a king is no longer in power.
Yeah, continue, Mataji.
Those whose minds are distorted by material desires surrender unto the demigods. Similarly, this verse condemns worship of the demigods. We may show our respect to the demigods, but the demigods are not worshipable. The intelligence of those who worship the demigods is lost, Krita Jnana, because these worshippers do not know that when the entire material cosmic manifestation is annihilated, the demigods, who are the departmental heads of that manifestation, will be vanquished. When the demigods are vanquished, the benedictions given by the demigods to unintelligent men will also be vanquished.
Yes, thank you, Mataji. So this is what Krishna is explaining here. All right. So, however, there are worshippers of devas, right? So they will go to the planets of the devas. So we have Ganesha Loka, Durga. I think there are so many lokas under. We have 33 million devas, right? So everybody have their lokas, so they will go there. Okay, and Krishna says, in comparatively, those who are my devotees, they will come to me. Okay, and other places, Krishna says, those who come to my abode will not return to material world. But here Krishna says, up to the Brahma Loka, everybody will go through birth and death. Okay. All right. So, okay, that's got it. Okay, this is the story of a father and a son. The son is having a flu, right? He wants ice cream. But the father says, oh, you have asthma. Eat homemade custard instead. It is good for you. So the father is not buying ice cream for him because he knows the son should not take it. All right. And then he asks an uncle. The uncle said, okay, I will buy you 3 ice creams. Probably because he wants to impress him. Because he's asking, you know, maybe he's pleased with him with some things that the boy has done for him. All right. So he gives him, okay, I will give you 3 ice creams just like you like, just like you want. And then, okay, he thanks him. But what happens? His disease gotten worse, and then he regret, I must have listened to my father. He knows what is good for me. So like that, there are certain things when we pray so hard to Krishna, he doesn't give us, because as a father, he knows what is needed for us. Okay, so he only gives what is necessary for us. Okay, so if it is good to understand Krishna, then why not everybody understand him? Somebody can read for us?
I'll go on, Taji.
Okay.
I'm never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them, I'm covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I'm unborn and infallible.
Right. So generally people ask why everyone cannot understand Krishna. Why? So this is the general question. Okay, if everybody can understand Krishna, why when Krishna spoke about Bhagavad Gita in the battlefield, not everybody could understand, only few people could, like Vidura, Pandavas, Bhishma, only these people know. They understood the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, not everybody, even though Krishna said in the middle of the battlefield. So Krishna is never stingy, all right? He wanted to give the knowledge to everybody. However, the knowledge is can be covered by what you call curtain of Yogamaya. So Krishna reveals this knowledge, and a person can only understand this knowledge when they surrender. So how much they surrender, that much Krishna reward. Okay, if you see this, as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Okay, as much as you surrender, I will reward accordingly. You surrender this much, I reward you more. So it's like that. Okay. And then in Ishopanishad, it is mentioned that, "Oh my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, sustainer of all lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee." So this is a prayer to put to Krishna to please remove that curtain that is covering you. We want to see you. So Krishna is covered by that. And then another verse is this: "O my Lord, O primeval philosopher, maintainer of the universe, O regulating principle, destination of the pure devotees," these are all glorifying the Lord, "well-wisher of the progenitors of mankind, please remove the effulgence of your transcendental rays so that I can see your form of bliss. You are the eternal supreme personality of Godhead, like unto the sun, as am I." Okay, here also is asking, please remove the effulgence. So Krishna covers himself. He doesn't reveal to everybody. So that is why not everybody can understand Krishna. So for those who have understood Krishna, is because they have acted piously in previous lives and in this life. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So who can surrender? Those who can take up Krishna consciousness seriously. They must have been pious in previous and current life. Okay, we can do service with determination, but sometimes we are not determined because we don't have the qualities that is mentioned here. So this is the obstacle. Okay, this is the last one. Somebody please.
I got it, Mataji. Okay. Those in full consciousness of me, who know
Those
me.
in full consciousness of me.
Okay. Who's gonna go?
Continue, Mataji.
Okay, Sharmila Mataji. Right.
Oh no, let Kala Mataji continue.
Kala Mataji, you can read, Mataji.
Okay, can. Those in full consciousness of me, who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation of the demigods and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death.
Yes, thank you, Mataji. So this is like a big
Okay,
conclusion.
Mataji.
Yeah. So this is the like big conclusion of this chapter. This is the last verse. Those in full consciousness of me. Number 1. Number 2, who
Done.
know me.
Yeah.
Number 3, can understand and know me, even at the time of death. This is very important. So if we do not practice our entire life thinking about Krishna in good and bad times, both good and bad times, if you do not do that, if you do not practice, it's difficult to think of Krishna at the time of death. We don't want to think about the wealth or any wealth be buried under any ground if we have. Or we don't want to think about the big house that we are going to leave behind, the big family that we're going to leave behind, the big legacy we're going to leave behind. We shouldn't be bothered about all that. We can only think about Krishna at the time of death. And then Krishna willing, we can go back to Krishna. Okay? So understanding that he is the source of everything, we have to have that meditation on Krishna. Okay? So yeah, we have Bhagavatam. It's very interesting. Please try to have Bhagavatam. We have installment plan. I highly recommend you all to buy this Bhagavatam. Okay. Yes, that's it. Mataji and Prabhu, thank you. I overshot 10 minutes.
Thank you
for the day, Mataji.